90 to 92. The Gerry Ryan Show, Monday to Friday, 9 till 12 on 2FM.
Anne, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry.
How are you? Yesterday I I read a letter that had been written to the show by a listener. And this was a guy who was married, and he was very concerned about the state of play that exists between men and women in this country now. And he had identified Irish women as having an insatiable, unashamed and boastful appetite for sex, who play the field even more than their male counterparts. And they have to get their wild ways out of their systems, but do they have to let themselves down? Men don't want the city bike. Some of the stuff he said made sense, and some of it was a million light years off the mark.
Well, quite frankly, Gerry, I was absolutely flabbergasted. Now, for starters, let me say, I'm 64, and I remember the 70s when women struggled, looking for equal work for equal pay, looking for contraception and all the rest of it. And we were encouraged to be independent. And now here we are at the stage now, where there are, I don't know, actually, Gerry, I was just so taken aback that a 36-year-old should say that. And as you say, there was some kind of truth in the things he said.
I think the things what makes the letter so confusing, for me certainly, was that I do believe that we are at a point in the cycle of our development where young women have become quite aggressive. And I think that this was a natural thing. It was bound to happen as part of the whole process of liberation. But it is, I think men find it quite frightening. Now, so that I identified with, but some of the other things that he said were borderline, like they were fascist. They were
actually
and medieval.
Misogynistic as well, Gerry.
Oh yeah, they were ultra misogynistic.
Yeah. I get the impression that here's someone, I mean, he had said himself that he had plenty of one-night stands.
Yeah,
and
when he was single, yeah.
Yeah. He was single, but he doesn't like the idea of women having a lot of one-night stands.
Well, you see, then again, you look at what he said here. He talks about having one-night stands, but how these experiences never could and never would equal the feeling that he gets from being with, desiring his wife and loving and being with his children.
But the same thing would go for a woman. This woman can also understand and you finally meet the right one.
Yeah.
I mean, he said that he spoke to two of his friends, one of them who had been married and the other one who'd been in a long-time relationship. And they both said the reason why their relationships broke up was because their wife or their girlfriend had sex with them on the first night.
Yeah, well, I don't accept that. That's rubbish, that is.
And I kept saying to myself, dear God, what is it with men? If a woman is too free, she's a slut. And if she says no, she's cold. Or she's accused of being a lesbian. I mean, they can't have it both ways.
No, I agree with you, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And a 36-year-old, I talk about a young fogey, and there he is then with his compliant little wifey at home, you know, completely dependent. I think he just doesn't like independent women, you know, at all. He just likes a woman, I mean, to be dependent on him.
And yet he will write a paragraph like this. Now, what I have found is no matter how many sexual partners you have, you won't feel complete. No matter how big your house is or the car that you drive, you won't feel complete. It is spending time with the ones you love and intertwining that love with that of your parents, brothers, sisters and family and friends. It is knowing your kids and wife are happy and safe that will really make you happy. I mean, that is true.
That is true. I mean, nobody could disagree with those.
No, but isn't it funny how this comes out of the mouth of the same man who says utterly ridiculous things as well?
But this is the thing that really struck a chord with me as well. On the one hand, that he's saying that because he's in a situation, I think he said his wife is pregnant with their third child. Yeah. So he's got a wife at home who's not a threat to him. She's at home. She's not out working. She's not an independent woman. You know, I contrast his attitude with my son who's 35.
Yeah.
My son's wife does go out to work, and there's one thing my son can't stand. is a doormat. He likes women who are strong, who've got something to say, you know, and he would be appalled at this fellow's attitude. He would agree with a lot of what he says about we all want to meet that one person. But there's one thing that men and women have in common equally. Of course you will have a lot of, not necessarily one-night stands, but you will have a lot of relationships before you find the one. Like in the old days, like people were inclined to know somebody for a very short time and then marry that person, which is a bad thing. It's a good idea to get to know a lot of people.
You see what I think?
Because if a man is not of one-night stands, well, he's as big a slut as a woman.
Well, Anne, what I think really is happening here is that this man is finding it difficult to articulate a fear that a lot of men have now, and it's not just young men have it, men in general, and that is the fear that women may not be as dependent on men as maybe the women in our grandfathers or our parents' time were, and that women are striving to attain the same sort of equity, or to attain equity with men in academic and in work environments. Now, what really freaks men out is that we define ourselves, like I certainly do, and I know most of my friends do as well. We define ourselves by what we do. In other words, I am the broadcaster, right? Now, hopefully, I am other things as well. But in the cold light of personal analysis, what men usually say is, I am the doctor, I am the lorry driver, I am the pilot, I am, and when you take that away from a man, or when you make it seem less significant or less important, men get very confused, and women are now achieving very high positions in jobs. They're not getting the parity of pay that they deserve necessarily just yet, but they are achieving, and they're overachieving compared. So, but they don't hold. I don't believe that women have the same obsession with their jobs and the description of their jobs that men have. So we're very confused about who we are now.
Yeah, it depends on their job. Gerry, in the town where I live here, my GP, both of his partners are both women. There's female dentists here, there's female opticians, and nowadays we have female pilots. They're all doing that, and those women are as dedicated to their job as men are.
But I don't think that women generally obsess about the job as much as men do.
Obsess, but I'm sure. I mean, the value is this, Gerry. And for a long time now, we've heard about girls doing very well in school and outdoing boys. They go on to college, to university, and they spend years at that, improving themselves, and they go on to have a career. Then those same women then, later on in life, if they have a family, they want to go out to work, they're told they should be at home. And I keep thinking, Christ almighty, they spent years, they did well at school, they went to college, they went for the reason that they wanted to do something in life. What is the point of having an education and then throwing it all away to stay at home? This awful pressure put on women as well. You should wake up, folks. This is the 21st century.
But also, I think that a lot of women...
If men are insecure, that's their problem.
Well, it's not fair to say that. It's not fair to say if men are insecure, that's their problem. Because after all,
not all of them.
we are the other half of the world.
Yeah, they are the other half. That's exactly it. The world is made up of men and women. And I'm not saying all men, of course not. As I say, look at my own son. There's nothing insecure about him.
No,
but
it doesn't sound like there is.
The attitude of some of the men reminds me of the attitude of white people in the States to black people. They don't like the fact that they've got on in life and they now have good jobs. I kind of see a parallel between racism and sexism.
Well, there is a parallel.
They want to keep people down and keep them in their place.
There is a parallel.
There is, and it's in that context. I'm not saying. I mean,
But you see, and the reason this is such an issue now is because it's very confusing for us as to what we are. What are we meant to be? Are we meant to be dominant? Women don't want to look up to men anymore. They don't seem to desire men in terms of being protected by them, or having a man decide whether, by his benediction, whether you're successful or not at home or in the workplace. So now that's gone. So, okay, you don't need men to say you're great anymore. So that thing's gone. Also, are we the leader of the household anymore? Probably not.
No,
So that's gone as well.
Gerry, that's only in Western society. The thing is...
Well, that's where I live. I live in Western society, and so do you. And the texts are coming in, 51552. I agree with that lady, says one texter. That man contradicts himself. We all have to go out and live life. If you meet the right person for life, you're lucky. But he should get off his soapbox, sexist preacher. Let's see. Brona, good morning. Are you there?
Good morning, Gerry. How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose I'm trying my best to represent confused mankind. By mankind, I mean masculine as opposed to feminine. And I'll be devil's advocate in as much as I can here this morning. I find that letter very, very confusing. And in finding it very confusing, I think it indicates very accurately the position of men's thinking on an awful lot of issues in relation to men and women at the moment.
I actually find it very amusing.
I don't think it's amusing.
Amusing in as much as for years and years women have struggled to try and get better at what they do. They've always had to work 2 or 3 times harder to get to the same position that
Why
men
does
have.
my heart sink the minute I hear that phrase and years?
No, but seriously, to get to the positions that they wanted. And now, because of that, all aspects of their life have become more aggressive to get where they want to be.
Yeah.
Now, I don't necessarily agree that there should be massive promiscuity and that men should be treated badly. I don't think anybody should be treated badly.
No.
And I do understand that, it must be confusing for men because they wear sort of the alpha male, the provider.
And
whatever.
also because there are still those little chinks of light that come through from the female world saying, protect me, take care of me, covet me, want me.
Well, I think a lot of people still feel that way. But because of the oppression of women for so many years, they feel that if they show that side of themselves, maybe that they're letting the side down. So to achieve what they feel they have to achieve, that guy admitted himself that to find the love and the happiness that he has reached now, he had to go through the sowing of the wild oats, as I stated in my text.
Yeah.
But women aren't being afforded the same opportunity. They still have to get out there and see what they want and what they don't want. But when women do it, the attitude is, what do they want? Why are they doing this? Sure, we're there to provide for you.
But isn't there a difference between, maybe I'm sort of parsing words here, but there's a difference between sowing wild oats and being unpleasant to people. I mean, you can have an active sex life and you can have, go through a lot of different girlfriends or boyfriends. I think the thing that concerns some people, and I think it should concern us all, is a generation of young women in particular who feel very aggressive about or are entertained by being cruel.
Well, again, an awful lot of media.
Do you think that's made up?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't have an awful lot of contact with the young circuit anymore, but I do think if you look at the music videos and a lot of films that are out, they portray women as cruel. I mean, any of the music videos, the woman is the one that has very little clothes on, she's writhing around the place and she's pushing men away. So I think that sort of seeps in insidiously. And when girls, as they're coming up, even the lyrics of the song...
Oh, this is the way to use your power. Your sexual power should be used in this way, yeah.
Exactly, because, some girls...
And it's such a negative message.
It is, and I mean, some girls think that is the only way they can get ahead. And they do have the capacity to do an awful lot without using their feminine wiles. They just need to use their brain. But unfortunately, because at a very, very early age, I mean, even the kids' programs now are showing that sort of physical aggression is the way to go.
And then on the other side of the coin, you have, and this is one of my obsessions, as you probably already know, and it particularly resides in the world of black urban rap music, where you have a big fat idiot with no education and a load of jewellery on him, who you wouldn't touch with a sticky barge pole, who has 30 of the most gorgeous and glamorous women all jumping on him, and he's there going, you motherfucker, look, I'm going to get you, you bitching on, and you're just going, oh, would you get away, will you give me a gun, somebody? I'll tell you what we'll do with the gun, we'll shoot you with it. I better stop, all right, good luck.
Thanks.
2FM. You're stuck in traffic, you don't like your job, your boss is evil, your car is falling to pieces. It cost more to fill it with petrol than it did to buy. People always think you're 10 years older than you are because you are. Nothing you own is actually paid for. Your house payment is 3 months overdue, and so is your girlfriend. Nothing is as important as The Will Leahy Show, Monday to Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. on 2FM. Everything else can wait.
2FM.
Dominic, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Gerry.
Now, Dominic, we were talking about Fidel Castro.
That's right, yes.
You were in Cuba in 1989. Did you see him?
We didn't see him, unfortunately. We would love to have seen him, but we were based in the resort of Varadero, and everything was structured. You couldn't go anywhere outside what was laid down for you.
Yeah, pretty much a police state, really.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, sorry. In the words of George Galloway, it's an absolutely fabulous country.
Right.
Fabulous.
No, it was very, very, very interesting. And I made a mistake when I was talking to your researcher there. I said the waitresses were very wary. Sorry, I made a mistake there. The waitresses were extremely friendly, but you couldn't.
Well, my understanding is that if anybody
tips.
working in the tourist industry was seen either eating the kind of food the tourists eat, taking money from them, or doing anything that might indicate they were getting close to the tourists, well, they'd be arrested.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, I haven't been there now, so that could be just...
One chap actually asked one of our party to buy him some liquor in the tourist shop.
Yeah.
And he was arrested.
He was arrested for that.
For that, yeah. Tourist guy got off. I actually took a photograph of it. We had to do it on the QT.
Yeah. And, well, I mean, but you see, my fear of all of these places that you hear, oh, it's fabulous, the people are lovely and the sun is fabulous and this, that and the other. And then you go there and they've only got Rice Krispies on the menu and...
Well, we found that there was no evidence of extreme poverty.
No,
in the
because
area we were.
At one point they had a health system.
Oh, they had a health system. They had that
comparable to the United States of America at 1/15 of the cost.
It was superb because one of our member of our party, he got very badly bitten by mosquitoes. His blood, I saw his room, it was like a war zone. But he was brought into hospital and he was treated very, very well.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's been like that for a few years. I think
maybe
that's gone down the tubes. But they had a great health system and they had a very good education system. I mean, they were churning out doctors at a much higher rate than any other country in South America. Unfortunately, they didn't seem to churn out democracy at the same rate. That was the problem.
That's right. Also, the educational system seemed to be good. Now, we didn't see that much of that, but the socially useful labour that we heard about, you saw loads of people being brought on trucks out to the fields. They didn't seem to mind. Seemed to be quite happy and jolly. Yeah, didn't seem to mind it, I don't know. I remember I hired a Jeep myself for a day, and very late in the evening, I was looking at the map, and I saw a guy with a nice straight road on the way back, and I said, well, I'll have no trouble getting back. But the nice straight road was almost a dirt track. And in order to help navigate, I used to pick up hitchhikers. And every now and then you'd hear, bicycle. There'd be a bicycle out on the road, with completely black. I'd almost have run into him, you know.
And did you go back there? I mean, did it enthrall you and romance you?
Oh, I'd love to go back. It was very good. I'm not. Maybe I sound a bit critical of it. I really loved it. People were extremely friendly. Now, the East Europeans were there at the time. The Russians and the East Europeans. They made unlikely allies of the Cubans because they were very dour. They were providing the lolly to keep the island afloat, all right.
Well, before the Soviet Union fell, of course, they were pumping money into Cuba,
The plug was about to be pulled, and indeed it was pulled very shortly afterwards.
And it was a destination of choice for Russian and Eastern European holiday
That's
makers.
right, because the weather, of course, was lovely. A lot of Canadians went there.
Yeah.
It was the cheapest place. I spoke to a Canadian who came back year after year. It was the cheapest place for them to go out to get to the sun. And they kind of liked it. After a while, you know, you get to know people and...
But what was the food like?
Oh, the food wasn't good.
No.
I found it very boring. We had half board and found it very, very, very bland. I was dying for a bit of hairy bacon when I got back home, you know.
Yeah, well, that's what I heard. And anything like that now will put me off a destination.
One English couple, I remember, he decided he'd try a restaurant outside. I don't know where he found one, but he had an awful job to find one, and he said it was even worse.
It was even worse?
Yeah. Now, we were out cycling one day, we hired bicycles and got into a restaurant one day. There was nothing in it. very friendly people behind the bar, nothing to be served.
It's like I recall being in Yugoslavia, and this place was like a palace, right?
Yeah.
First thing that was a bit odd was when we checked in, the bedrooms seemed to be communal.
Yes.
There was about 20 people staying in the bedrooms. So I remember thinking, I was a student at the time, I thought, well, that's a bit odd, but sure, there you have it. It's kind of like a glorified hostel arrangement. And then we went down to this absolutely magnificent dining room. And there were waiters wearing white dress jackets and everything. And they came over to give us a huge menu. It had everything on it. Chateaubriand, lobster thermidor, you name it. And so I said, well, I'll have the steak and I'll have such and such a thing started. No. So after going through about 20 different things, I said, what have you got? Sausages.
Yeah. Well,
Sausages.
there was a good bit of food in our hotel, but it was very bland. I didn't like it.
All right, Dominic, thank you for that. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Gerry.
Cuba, you've been there?
Yeah, I was there 2 years ago, Gerry. Went to Havana first for a few days and then down to Varadero. I mean, I was just listening to that caller there. From what I can gather, he just went to Varadero.
And just stayed there, yeah.
Yeah, Varadero is a purpose-built holiday tourist resort. But, you know, an awful lot has changed. When I was in Varadero, I mean, the standard of the hotels and the standard of basically everything around, I mean, it wasn't a situation where you couldn't go outside the hotel. I mean, we hired motorcycles and just went driving through Cuba, you know what I mean? But I certainly would recommend, Gerry, that if anybody goes to Cuba, to go to Havana first, because Havana is the real Cuba. That's where you see the real, you know.
Now, when you say the real Cuba, what do you mean by that?
Well, you see, Cuba is, it was an eye-opener for me because I've never been in a country, let's say, you know, with a society run or a country run the way it is. And it's a weird sort of situation. I mean, they have the basics. However, when I say the basics, Gerry, I mean, they'll say everybody has a house, everybody has education up to third level. However, the houses that they do live in are, you know, one stage away from falling down.
Okay.
However, it's a very hard sort of country to describe, but tourism is what they're building on now. And in Havana, I mean, there's not that much tourism. Most people live in Havana. In Varadero, the only Cuban people that live in Varadero are actually the Cuban people that work in the
But what have they got
industry.
to offer, you know, a tourist? I mean, what's there that would make you want to go there?
Well, I mean, the history alone, Gerry, of Cuba is, I mean, it's probably a country with more history than any other country. And to actually go and, I mean, the museum, not museums that they have, well, I suppose you could call them museums, but I mean, on the streets they have, you know, say, the van that Castro arrived in with his crew, you know, that drove to the government buildings to you know, start the revolution. I mean, the history is probably...
That's an awful long way to go to see a van, isn't it?
I suppose when you look at it like that, it is. But I mean,
no, but come on. I mean, you know, are there nice beaches? Are there very glamorous girls? Are there beautiful cocktails? Are there wonderful hotels? Is there salsa dancing?
Yeah, actually, Gerry, in Varadero, everything you've mentioned there, you have.
Yeah, okay.
And this idea of, I mean, the food, where people say, oh, what do you have? Oh, I have sausages. I mean, we could get basically anything you wanted in the hotel, and not just the hotel that I stayed in. I mean, in the other hotels in the surrounding areas. But as I said, that's in Varadero. The beaches are just absolutely fantastic, like nothing you've ever come across.
Okay, well, this sounds a bit more like it. Yeah, I'm getting a bit more interested now.
You know, in Varadero.
And in Havana, I always dream that Havana has this kind of mysterious nightlife and there's a sort of clandestine atmosphere, and you wouldn't really know what was going on behind those saloon doors.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, Gerry, as I said, when I went when we went to Cuba, I spent a couple of days in Havana first, and the first night actually walking out in Havana, I have to say I was terrified, because there was people all along the front, let's say, you know, drinking rum or whatever, and the image that I had was like, you know, the same image the same sort of feeling that you get if you're walking down a common street and you see people drinking out of bottles. I mean, I thought it was a rough sort of, dangerous area. But it's not. The Cuban people are actually so friendly. Now, nobody will actually go near a tourist. Now, there's a reason for that, Gerry, that if a tourist is robbed or attacked, I mean, I think it's a mandatory 5-year prison sentence, no questions asked. So, I mean, that's a hell of a deterrent.
So the tourist is God, basically. You don't mess with the tourist.
You don't mess with the tourists, but at the same time, they're very approachable people, Gerry. They're very friendly. I mean, I walked out of a hotel on the first morning in Havana and happened to bump into this couple just as we were walking along, and they just introduced her, hello, who are you, where are you from? And I was explaining, and of course, straight away, I'm terrified. Who are these? Are they going to rob me? But we just got talking to them, and they asked, do you want to see Havana? Yeah, we'll walk around. And they brought us to, let's say, places, just streets where, off the beaten track. Now, again, as I said, I was a little bit nervous at the start, but they were a really nice couple. And they showed us parts of Cuba, Gerry, that the tourist doesn't see. And the one thing that the guy said to me was that, do you notice anything about the houses along the street here? And, I said, well, apart from the fact that they're nearly falling down. And he says, yeah, but there's no doors. He says, people just come and go. They're very friendly people and very family orientated.
And are you going back there, are you?
I'm going back again in April, Gerry. Yeah, I can't wait. I always said that, the world was too small to go back to the same place twice. But, and last year, I didn't go back for that reason. And I was certain to go back, so we decided that I'm going back again now in April this year.
And who do you go with, David?
Well, I booked it separately, Gerry. I booked it just...
No, I mean, who do you travel with?
I would just travel with my partner.
All right, okay.
And, again, it's definitely a place I would recommend. Actually, a colleague of mine recommended it to her last year, and she's only back now, and she said she's had one of the most fantastic holidays she's ever had.
All right, well, bon voyage. You've titillated my palate a little more than the last caller. You make it sound a little bit more exciting, and thank you very much for that. Good morning. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the reason I wouldn't probably go to Cuba, or the reason I haven't gone to Cuba, is that my image of Cuba is when the Americans were there and the casinos were thriving and it was all, big bands and great music and Frank Sinatra and all sorts of intrigue going on. Kind of like that movie Havana with Robert Redford in it. I thought, yeah, that'd be good. That looks like it might be a destination of choice. And now I developed the opinion, I have to admit, in the last decade or so, particularly from friends of mine who would go there. And I have a selection of friends, a very eclectic selection of friends, some of whom are extremely tolerant of third world sort of scenarios, and they'll come back from places and they'll go, it was absolutely fascinating. And I'll say, really, and what was the hotel like? Oh, awful. But it was fascinating. And what was the food like? Oh, dreadful. And what was the nightlife like? Non-existent. But they loved the place. So when I hear that, I kind of go, right, well, that's not from G. Ryan. I've done enough of that stuff now in my time. I don't need to go back there again. So maybe now our friend has made the place sound a little bit more interesting. I have to say, I think I laughed last night when I was watching the Channel 4 news and there was a big long extended piece about Castro on, and there's the brother who's apparently stepped in for him now while he was sick, which is not that great an idea either, to be honest. But he gets to be president now that Castro stepped down. I mean, that's not really on, is it? In 2008, I don't think so. I don't think that's progress by any stretch of the imagination.